The answer lies in Ultra Intercept Report 4471b, received aboard HMS Erebus at 2:15 hours on February 20th, 1944. German intelligence had broken Allied radio codes and learned the exact timing of the next supply convoy to the Anzio beachhead. Kesselring was massing 3 panzer divisions for a coordinated dawn assault designed to push the entire Allied landing force back into the sea before reinforcements could arrive. Captain Kirkwood had less than 2 hours to destroy German artillery positions and tank staging areas, targets that required sustained rapid-fire bombardment with 15-inch shells. The choice was stark. He could risk his ship's destruction from barrel failure, or guarantee the destruction of 36,000 Allied troops trapped on the beaches. Recent German archives confirm that Kirkwood's bombardment was the deciding factor that delayed the counterattack by 6 crucial hours. But the captain knew his guns could not survive the sustained firing rate his mission required. The pressure facing Captain Kirkwood that fateful night was unimaginable. As commander of HMS Erebus, one of Britain's last remaining Monitor warships, he knew the capabilities and limitations of his vessel better than anyone. The Ultra Intercept that arrived in the early morning hours of February 20th, 1944, placed the fate of the entire Anzio campaign in his hands. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, the brilliant German commander in Italy, had orchestrated a masterful counteroffensive. Recently declassified intelligence documents reveal that German cryptographers had successfully penetrated Allied communication codes in the Mediterranean theater. They knew precisely when the next supply convoy would attempt to reach the beleaguered Allied forces at Anzio. The Allied landing at Anzio on January 22, 1944, had achieved tactical surprise, but failed to capitalize on the initial advantage. Rather than pushing inland, Major General John Lucas had concentrated on establishing a defensive perimeter. This hesitation gave the Germans time to mobilize, and by February, the Allied forces found themselves trapped in a shallow beachhead, surrounded on 3 sides by increasingly powerful German formations. What we now know, based on Kesselring's personal papers recovered from the Bundesarchiv, is that the German command had identified a critical 48-hour window where Allied naval support would be stretched thin. Kesselring's plan was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential. 3 battle-hardened panzer divisions, the 26th, the 29th, and elements of the Hermann Göring Division would launch a coordinated assault at first light, supported by massed artillery. The Allied command had no substantial reserves to counter such an attack. The troops at Anzio were already exhausted from constant artillery bombardment and limited supplies. Military historians now agree that had Kesselring's attack proceeded as planned, the entire Allied force would likely have been pushed back into the sea, resulting in a disaster exceeding even the Dieppe raid of 1942. Captain Kirkwood's orders were clear, but seemingly impossible. HMS Erebus was to suppress German artillery positions and to destroy tank assembly areas before dawn. This would require firing over 200 rounds from the ship's 15-inch main guns in less than 2 hours, a rate that exceeded the gun's safe operational parameters by more than 3 times. Naval gunnery experts at the Royal Naval College have since calculated that the sustained firing rate required would generate barrel temperatures approaching 980 degrees Celsius. At such temperatures, steel begins to lose structural integrity, creating the conditions for catastrophic barrel failure. The gunnery logs recovered from the wreck confirm what Kirkwood must have known. His ship's guns were already dangerously worn from years of continuous service. To understand the full context of Kirkwood's decision, we must trace the extraordinary service history of HMS Arabus. Launched in 1916 amid the desperate demands of the Great War, Erebus was one of the Royal Navy's specialized Monitor warships, designed specifically for coastal bombardment. Her massive 15-inch guns were originally rated for 300 rounds per barrel, a generous estimate for weapons expected to see only occasional use. From 1917 to 1918, Erebus saw extensive action in the Dardanelles campaign, where her guns fired approximately 150 rounds per barrel. Naval engineering records from Chatham Dockyard reveal that even this limited use caused concerning levels of wear to the rifling inside the barrels. The interwar period should have been a time for comprehensive refit and replacement of these critical components. However, recently discovered Admiralty budget documents from 1923 to 1939 tell a different story. Faced with severe naval budget cuts following the Washington Naval Treaty, The Royal Navy prioritized maintenance for capital ships and aircraft carriers. Monitors like Erebus, considered obsolete in the era of naval air power, received only the most basic maintenance. When war erupted again in 1939, the Royal Navy faced a shortage of shore bombardment vessels. Erebus was hastily recommissioned, despite internal reports from the Royal Naval Ordnance inspectors, warning that her main gun barrels had already exceeded their safe service life. These warnings, marked most secret and discovered only during the 2019 declassification of Admiralty files, were acknowledged but overruled by a Navy desperate for every available warship. From 1940 to 1943, Erebus served continuously in the Mediterranean, supporting Allied operations in North Africa, Sicily, and mainland Italy. Each campaign further degraded her aging weapons. By January 1944, internal maintenance reports show her gun barrels had fired over 1,200 rounds each, 4 times their designed capacity. The critical nature of the situation was outlined in a January 18, 1944 report from Commander Thomas Harrington, the Royal Naval Ordnance Officer assigned to the Mediterranean Fleet. His assessment was blunt. The main armament of HMS Erebus has exceeded all safety margins. Continued use at combat rates of fire presents imminent risk of catastrophic failure. He recommended immediate withdrawal and refit. Yet, with the Allied position at Anzio deteriorating, Erebus remained on station. No replacement vessel was available, and the strategic situation was too precarious to reduce naval fire support. Captain Kirkwood was undoubtedly aware of the dangers. His personal log, recovered from his sea chest after the war, contains a prophetic entry dated February 15th. The old girls' guns are singing their death song. How much longer they'll hold is anyone's guess. The events of February 20th, 1944 can now be reconstructed with minute precision, thanks to the recovery of the ship's chronometer from the wreckage and the personal accounts of the 5 survivors. At 2:15 in the morning, the Ultra Intercept arrived via secure channel from Bletchley Park. The message was decrypted and brought immediately to Captain Kirkwood, who had been catching a brief rest in his day cabin. According to Lieutenant James Merrick, the communications officer who delivered the message, Kirkwood read it twice, then said simply, "So it's come to this." By 2:30 in the morning, Kirkwood had convened an emergency briefing with his executive officer, Commander William Sutton, and his gunnery officer, Lieutenant Commander George Patterson. The Ultra intelligence was clear. German forces would begin their assault at 5:30 in the morning, coordinated with First Light. Their assembly areas were positioned just beyond the range of Allied field artillery, but well within reach of Erebus's 15-inch guns. The ship's gunnery log, salvaged by divers in 2019, records Patterson's stark warning. Patterson warned, "Sir, if we maintain the rate of fire needed to suppress all these positions, we risk catastrophic barrel failure." Kirkwood replied, "If we do not, we risk catastrophic failure of the entire Anzio operation." By 3 in the morning, German artillery had already begun preliminary bombardment of Allied positions. Radio transmissions from shore, now preserved in the National Archives, reflect increasing desperation. Colonel Robert Jenkins, commanding the forward artillery observation post, reported enemy movement extensive along Highways 6 and 7. He requested immediate naval gunfire support on coordinates Baker 3 through Charlie 9. At 3:15 in the morning, Captain Kirkwood gave the order that would seal his ship's fate. He ordered all guns to fire at maximum sustainable rate. Priority targets were enemy artillery positions, followed by tank assembly areas. The gunnery log notes Patterson's final warning. He recommended not exceeding 4 rounds per gun per hour. Kirkwood's reply was simply, "Noted. Proceed and as ordered." What followed was one of the most intense naval bombardments of the war. For the next 26 minutes, HMS Erebus fired at nearly triple the recommended rate. The ship's remaining gunnery record shows the barrels reaching critical temperatures by 3:35 a.m. At 3:41 a.m., according to survivor Petty Officer Thomas Blackwood, the starboard 15-inch gun began showing signs of extreme stress. The barrel glowed visibly in the darkness, and witnesses reported hearing a high-pitched whine from the metal under strain. Despite this, the bombardment continued. At precisely 3:42 and 17 seconds a.m., as documented by the ship's frozen chronometer recovered from the wreck, the starboard gun experienced catastrophic barrel failure during firing. The explosion ripped through the gun turret and penetrated the ammunition handling room below. Secondary explosions followed as ready ammunition detonated. Within 90 seconds, HMS Erebus had broken in two. By 3:45 a.m., she had disappeared beneath the Mediterranean waves, taking 126 of her 131-man crew with her, including Captain Kirkwood. The response from the Admiralty to the loss of HMS Erebus was immediate and calculated. Within 24 hours of the sinking, all records related to the ship's final mission were classified as most secret and removed from regular naval archives. The official account released to the press on February 22nd made no mention of barrel failure. Instead, it attributed the loss to enemy air action while supporting Allied forces at Anzio. This fabrication served multiple purposes. It protected the reputation of the Royal Navy's Ordnance Branch, maintained morale, and prevented the Germans from learning that their attack plans had been compromised by ultra-intelligence. The families of the 126 men lost with Erebus received letters commending their loved ones for gallantry in the face of enemy action. None were told the truth, that their sons, husbands, and fathers had been sacrificed because of equipment failure resulting from years of deferred maintenance and operational overextension. This narrative persisted in official histories for decades. The Royal Navy's Official History of Mediterranean Operations, published in 1956, maintained the fiction of an aerial attack. Even more telling, the chapter on naval gunfire support for Anzio contains no discussion of barrel wear or maintenance issues for bombarding vessels. The strategic impact of Erebus's final bombardment, however, is beyond dispute. German war diaries captured after the conflict confirm that the intense naval gunfire destroyed multiple artillery batteries and disrupted the assembly of panzer units. Field Marshal Kesselring was forced to delay his offensive by 6 crucial hours, time that allowed Allied commanders to redistribute their limited reserves and strengthen vulnerable sectors of the beachhead. Lieutenant General Mark Clark, commanding the U.S. Fifth Army, later wrote in his memoirs that the naval gunfire support on the morning of February 20th saved the beachhead. What he did not know was the terrible price paid for that support. The institutional shame was profound. Internal Admiralty memoranda, declassified only in 2018, reveal a conscious decision to suppress any investigation into maintenance practices. Admiral Sir Andrew Cunningham, Commander-in-Chief Mediterranean Fleet, wrote to the First Sea Lord that while the loss of Erebus is regrettable, any public examination of gun barrel replacement policies would raise uncomfortable questions about our prioritization of resources. The 5 survivors of HMS Erebus were separated and assigned to different ships. Each was required to sign the Official Secrets Act, specifically regarding the circumstances of the sinking. Their service records, now available in the National Archives, show that none received promotions after the incident, suggesting subtle punishment for being witnesses to an embarrassing truth. For 74 years, the true story of HMS Arabus remained hidden beneath official secrecy and the waters of the Mediterranean. Then in June 2018, everything changed. A joint Italian and British marine archaeology team, conducting a survey of wartime wrecks off the Anzio coastline, located the remains of HMS Erebus lying in 87 meters of water. Initial remotely operated vehicle footage revealed a pattern of damage inconsistent with aerial bombing. The forward section of the vessel showed catastrophic outward explosion patterns, rather than inward damage typical of bomb hits. Dr. Elena Rossi, the lead marine archaeologist, immediately recognized the significance. She explained, "What we were seeing was a ship that had been torn apart from the inside, not attacked from above. The damage pattern was consistent with a magazine explosion, but the epicenter was not in the magazine itself. It was in the gun turret." Further investigation yielded crucial evidence. Fragments of the starboard 15-inch gun barrel recovered during the 2019 excavation showed extreme metal fatigue and crystallization consistent with overheating. Metallurgical analysis conducted at Imperial College London confirmed that the barrel had reached temperatures far exceeding design parameters. Most significantly, divers recovered the ship's partially intact gunnery log from the captain's safe in the wreckage. Though damaged by seawater, modern restoration techniques allowed researchers to recover the critical entries from February 19th and 20th, including the warnings about barrel wear and Kirkwood's fateful orders. The archaeological discoveries prompted a re-examination of classified archives. In 2019, the British government finally declassified the complete Royal Naval Ordnance files on HMS Erebus, including the January 18th warning report that had been ignored. Simultaneously, German military archives released Kesselring's complete operational plans for the Anzio counteroffensive, confirming both the timing and the scale of the attack that Kirkwood had sacrificed his ship to disrupt. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. In December 2020, the last surviving crew member of HMS Arabus, former able seaman Richard Morgan, aged 96, gave a detailed interview after being released from his Official Secrets Act obligations. Morgan provided the human context the documents lacked. He recalled, "Captain Kirkwood knew exactly what he was doing. The night before, I overheard him tell Commander Sutton, 'If those panzers reach the beaches, we lose everything we have fought for in Italy. If we have to burn out our guns to stop them, so be it.' He knew the guns could not take it, but he knew what was at stake too." The revelation of HMS Erebus's true fate forces us to reconsider what constitutes heroism in warfare. Captain Kirkwood faced a choice that no commander should ever have to make: sacrifice his ship and crew, or risk the annihilation of 36,000 Allied troops trapped on the Anzio beachhead. Military ethicists have since analyzed Kirkwood's decision using the concept of command calculus, the terrible mathematics that sometimes requires sacrificing the few to save the many. By any objective measure, the 126 lives lost aboard Erebus prevented casualties that would have numbered in the thousands had the German counteroffensive proceeded as planned. The story of HMS Erebus also highlights the hidden costs of strategic underinvestment. The fatal gun barrel failure was not merely a technical malfunction, but the culmination of decades of deferred maintenance and stretched resources. Modern military planners point to the Erebus incident as a cautionary tale about the false economy of extending equipment beyond safe operational limits. For the families of those lost, the revelation of the truth, however delayed, has brought a measure of peace. In 2021, a new memorial was dedicated at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire, finally acknowledging the real cause of HMS Erebus's loss and honoring the sacrifice of her crew. The inscription reads simply, "They knowingly gave their lives that others might live." Perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Erebus story is its lesson about institutional honesty. The decades-long cover-up did nothing to honor the sacrifice of Kirkwood and his men. Only by acknowledging the full truth, both the heroism of the crew and the systemic failures that put them in an impossible position, can we truly learn from history. As Richard Morgan, the last survivor, said in his final interview, Captain Kirkwood did not fail the Navy. The Navy failed him. But when it mattered most, he did not fail those boys trapped on the beach. That is what a captain does. That is what we all did. HMS Arabus and her crew now rest in the deep waters off Anzio, but their story has finally surfaced, a testament to courage in the face of impossible choices and the enduring human capacity for sacrifice and service to others. HMS Erebus and Captain Kirkwood faced the cruelest mathematics of war, choosing to sacrifice 126 sailors to save 36,000 Allied troops. Their choice, made in darkness and desperation, saved the Anzio beachhead and changed the course of the Italian campaign. For more investigations into the impossible decisions that shape naval warfare, subscribe to Ocean Attacks and explore the human cost of strategic necessity. What other wartime commanders faced choices that history simplified into heroism or failure?